Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Captive Audience. This Don Anderson here, Leslie Schneider there. And if you haven't figured that out, I don't know. So glad to see you again, Leslie. So glad for the rest of you all to join in. Feel free to hit the chat line. I'm going to open this up so I can see what you guys are talking about out there. Hit us with what you got, and we'll hit you with what we got. Sound good? They answered. I heard it. They said sound good. So
You've been going to black church for too long. You need that encouragement, right?
Right. Well, I got a giant cup of afternoon, go juice, so I'm ready to rock.
It's funny when we have the black pastors that will come and they'll talk to us and they're like, "You guys are so quiet. Like, I'm not used to being in a white church. I need somebody to amen me or something." And it's like, yeah.
You just reminded me. That's such a funny comment because. So quick segue. So I went to, I was just telling Leslie earlier here, one of my best friend's sister died. And so went to her funeral this afternoon. So it's classic Southern Black Baptist, which is the way I grew up. I'm Catholic now. So it's kind of having foot in both worlds, right? So I remember when I first became Catholic, it was hilarious. I was like looking around like, man, it's so quiet. And the homily is they talk in a normal volume and you get to kind of like lean forward and listen. And then the service is over in exactly an hour. By contrast, I just left this funeral. It was 2 hours. And it was at a high volume.
Oh my gosh.
I always have a laugh at this sort of thing. I hear the Catholics will come out of church and they're like kind of said, "Oh, he went like 5 minutes long." I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" I've gone to church on Easter, walked in at 11 o'clock and left at 3.
Oh my gosh.
Oh
my gosh.
Yeah, we know never go to in the Baptist tradition anyway. Don't go to church hungry. Because it'd be 3 hours before you get a meal. Yeah. Now, when you get a meal, it's going to be phenomenal, by the way.
Yeah.
Right? But you're going to wait. Anyway,
those papers won't tide you over.
Yes, absolutely. I love my country. We got so many different cultures going on at the same time. It's like just, hey, it's little things like that, I swear, that make it so great. You can go one block. This is my old neighborhood. I'm sure it's true in any city. I can go one block and be in a Lutheran church and then be in a Episcopalian church the next block, right? And then be in a Catholic church the next block. And the Episcopalian church, by the way, is black. Right? I mean, in my old neighborhood, right? So in the church I was just in the 60s, it went through this thing where it became like when the hippie thing was in. So that was the one church. Everybody else dressed up to go to church except for this church. So people would go barefoot and they would go with the tie-dye t-shirts, the giant peace signs, and the hair all the way to, they were white, the hair was down their back. If they're black, the afro was so big, you didn't want to sit behind them, right?
Block your view.
Yeah, exactly. So what other country do you have this going on? I just think it's amazing. I'll never get over it. I love my country. What can I say?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree with you for sure.
Yeah.
It's cool to see, just everybody's welcome, just bring it to God and it's all going to be good, no matter how it comes out.
Such an incredible tapestry that can't be found anywhere else on earth. And of course, part of the reason why we're out here talking about doing the things we're talking about today is to keep it, right?
That's right. That's right.
There are those who are out to kill it, and we're here to save it. So, so great segue, though, to talk about what we're going to talk about. We were just talking about, who was it? I forgot already. See what happens?
Well, we mentioned Newsom and, his little stinky business. But there's just so much to untangle that I feel like we need to almost dedicate a whole hour to it.
Yeah. But, it was Blair. It was the Great Britain.
Keir Starmer.
Yeah. So, we'll start with that one because it is so, I say, encouraging, because I felt so sorry and so helpless and so hopeless for the British people to be putting up with leadership like that. I mean, how can you throw your borders open and ignore they got rape gangs, like thousands of them going on? And there that
Well, I mean, as we know, I can't remember the name of the gentleman who was reading it on the floor last week, but this has been going on for 40 years. This is a 40-year inquiry, a report that details 40 years worth of corruption within police, healthcare workers, social service workers, just people looking away. And the shame that these poor girls have and the emboldening that's been going on with these Muslim rapists. I mean, no wonder they feel like they can run the world, right? They've been doing it. Right. And the fact that they've been targeting white Christian women specifically because they think that they're dirty and they're weak and they're full of sin and they're trash. They think that they're trash. And it's just like what I was telling you that is it Katie Hopkins? Katie, who's the one who does that that batshit crazy, you know, she was talking a couple weeks ago about how she was doing some investigations into like some investigative journalism several years ago, and she's English, and she started going to the mosques and listening to what these, you know, imams were talking about from behind the pulpit, whatever you call it up there. And they held up this dirty lollipop, and they said, this is a white Christian woman. It's a dirty lollipop. See how everything sticks to it. The bugs, the hair, the trash. This is a white woman. And that is exactly how they feel about us. And it's our freaking country. I just don't understand this. But think of the shame that the complete lack of power, lack of lack of humanness that these women must have, and anybody who knows them and loves them must have felt that, like, they live under an oppressive regime. They've lived under a system that didn't believe them, you know, kind of like the police did with that poor Henry Novak, you know, who was stabbed and left to bleed out and die on the ground. They watched him die. They didn't care. That's exactly what's been going on with these women. And so I'm encouraged that, you know, Keir Starmer has resigned, and hopefully there's going to be a lot of sunlight that comes in. If it doesn't, I can't see how either that society is going to disappear or it's going to be a violent uprising.
Yeah, it's hard to say this, but you reach a point where it's hard to see how it can happen politically. Because you have to think, Keir Starmer is like the iceberg that the Titanic hit. Only the smallest part is what you see above the water. Because obviously he's not implementing all of this stuff on his own. So you've got a whole apparatus of an administrative state that is bought into this stuff. So either they financially benefit from doing the things they're doing. You might think about the constables and the police people who are actually enforcing this stuff, that you could be willing to implement a law so completely immoral against your own people. You are either a true believer in it or you're financially tied to it, and you don't have the moral courage to walk away from it. And that is going to be the difficult thing, is how do you upend that apparatus? And all of that in a country that doesn't have a Second Amendment. It is going to be a brutal thing to overturn, because remember, this is a religion of conquest. So it's not like you're going to use political processes to reverse that.
There's no foundation that they can refer to that says, oh, right, this is how we got off track. They don't even have that.
No, they don't have that. The objective is to take over. So I don't know how they, how you got to get rid of thousands of Keir Starmers. He's just the guy at the tip of the iceberg. And who's going to replace him? My understanding is that the guy who's going to replace, that is likely to replace him, is just another suit. It's not like they're replacing him with a Donald Trump type person, is what it looks like.
No, but remember that Keir lost his position. He is no longer in a majority position. Remember, it's Nigel Farage, I think, who's actually gained the majority position. So Keir was there, but he
Mhm.
didn't have the power anymore. So whoever replaces him is going to still be in that minority, quiet place. And so, it's now going to be up to the other group to start rolling things back or implementing. I mean, I just, yeah,
Mhm.
I don't know how year after year, like term after term, like, that these people knew about it. You don't
Yeah.
have that many people committing heinous crimes, coordinated heinous crimes, and nobody knows about it.
Well, and I have sort of a theory. My wife and I have talked about this over the years. Like, what makes Americans different from Europeans or different from people all over the world, basically? And I won't be very good at articulating this, but let me give it a shot. But I think at bottom, the Jeffersonian concept that all men are created equal and endowed by the Creator, that whole thing, we actually believe that. Whereas in the rest, so we are citizens, and the government works for us. I mean, in our it's in our core. It's what we were raised with. Now, granted, there are people in the generations behind us that didn't get it to the degree that we did, but we think that in Europe, and these people come from cultures where they've had monarchs, and they're used to being subjects of kings and queens, and so they tell us what to do. Here, we tell them what to do, and that is a radical difference. So, how does that relate to this thing going on in Great Britain right now? They're very slow to do anything to tell their government to change its behavior. I mean, yeah, it's a constitutional monarchy, I guess you can call it, but they've got generations of this monarchical type behavior. It's almost like a serf-like mindset that
Yeah.
somebody tells me what to do, I got to do it. Whereas in our country, like you look at, for example, the whole masking thing. Yeah, in the West, where we have a lot of progressives, because progressives believe in that stuff, like being a subject. But huge swaths of the country ignored it. Once you got outside of the cities, you didn't see any of that. But you look at countries like Australia, man, where they all turned in all their guns and and couldn't wait to put a mask on their faces and were ratting out their fellow neighbors or whatever. And you saw that in places like Great Britain as well.
Yeah.
You didn't see that to that extent here. And I think that's the reason why. It's like it's a part of our DNA. And it's one of the things that makes us unique. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but that's kind of where we landed.
No, I think you're right. I mean, Americans have, what's been so attractive about this country is that people are rewarded for self sufficiency, for risk taking, for being, yeah, just bold ideas, bold actions, and having this limitless possibility mindset.
Mhm.
And you're right. And in pretty much everywhere else in the world, there's been someone in charge. And it's just such a shame that people don't see that Americans don't see that. We've become so insular, and the last 15 years, when we've put all of our children on digital devices, that they're just spoon fed what the screen gives them, and they're not up looking around. I mean, think about these not traditional, but like a classical education that the elite and the royals used to get, where they would, part of their education was they were sent out to travel around the world.
Mhm.
And they went out across the world so that they could learn languages, so that they could learn trade routes, so that they could understand other cultures, that they could develop an understanding of the world, and then use that to build their society.
Mhm.
And we have become completely insular. Everything that our kids know, everything that is taught to them, even the pace that their curriculum is delivered to them, is all controlled by a digital device, and obviously the company that's writing the software for that learning program. And even when you get out from your device, technically, because you're no longer in school, we've got it right there in our pocket. And it's like, let's not believe what's in front of my eyes. Let me look at this.
Mhm.
Right? Like, I don't believe that, you know, the world around me, you know, is beautiful. I'm going to read what these reports say, what Black Lives Matter says, you know, about America, right? Like there's all these reports of people who are encountering folks that are coming over for the World Cup soccer,
Mhm.
and
I've
they've
seen
been
that.
right, and these people are like, oh my gosh, I was told that like America was like horrible and it was dangerous, and this, and like sure it is in some places, but it's mostly not, right? And all of a sudden they're,
Mhm.
you know, having to
Mhm.
re I guess, I mean, for forever, we've been this wonderful place that everybody wanted to come to because we were safe and clean and there was opportunities for learning and making money and building a better life, you know, a life of freedom and choices. And somehow we've lost that.
And
And
see, this is strategic. The folks that control the media want you to think it's horrible and
yeah,
it's terrible everywhere. And you'll notice how, and I think we talked about this earlier. I think there's something like 90,000 counties in the United States, and in all the like 90% of the murders happen in like 5%, like 2% of the counties or something, right? So in the other 89,800 counties is for, and hey, walk out your front door right now. It's fine. I could walk in my neighborhood at midnight and not think nothing of it. In fact, I could walk through huge swaths of even Portland and be fine. The vast majority of the country is not like that.
yeah,
But what the media does is the objective is to make you live in fear, to
yeah,
make you think things are horrible, and
yeah,
make you think the United States is a terrible place. So
yeah,
they're always focused, and everybody's in some kind of a racial strife situation.
yeah,
And it's 100% not true. I remember writing about this probably 5 or 6 years ago in the middle of this pandemic, and they're trying to convince us that there's race wars everywhere. Well, I used to race bicycles, do a lot of bicycle training. And the beautiful thing about a bicycle is you're out there, and I'd be out there in the middle of the country in places where Black people aren't supposed to go. I'm talking Montana, Southern Oregon, Northern California, all those places that you're supposed to be scared. And I met nothing but the most wonderful people, farmers on the tractor, the guy out doing his, tending to the vineyard, the guy riding the horse. I mean, the guy at the country store. And I'm just out the guy in the tractor, right? It is like nonsense. I am struck constantly by how cool the average American is. Hey, you only got a few groceries, you go to the front of me in the line.
mhm,
Oh, you're a dollar short. Here you go. Let me cover that for you, right? This
yeah,
happens all the time. And when you talk to people from other countries, when you really talk to them, they'll tell you one of the things that strike them is they can't believe how kind the average American is. Pedestrians crossing the street, cars stop. You know how rare that is? We take that for granted. Here's one for you. I thought about this morning. I get packages delivered on the porch all the time. Nothing ever gets stolen. Now, if you turn on the media, all you see is porch pirates. And yeah, of course, there are places, zip codes, I might say, where those kinds of things happen. But that business model could not work if there were porch pirates everywhere.
yeah, that's true.
The reason it's a big deal is because it's rare.
Right,
Man bites dog. Why
right,
is that a big deal? Because it's rare. We
right,
have the expectation in this country that people won't steal. Try that business model in South Africa, by the way.
right.
So we live in an incredible place,
Yeah,
from a
yeah,
safety perspective, and it's evidenced by the fact that we make such a big deal out of a single crime that happens. I mean, it's terrible. For example, what happened to, I can't remember the lady's name. She's a news reporter, and her mom like disappeared, kind of a thing, right? In Arizona, I think it was.
yep,
But
yep.
that's not even newsworthy in places like India or China.
Nancy Guthrie.
Yeah, Nancy Guthrie. So we have an event like that, and it's like we're talking about it for months. You go to other parts of the world, that's not even. You got to bring me like 5,000 people got killed in an earthquake, and it might make one night of news.
Yeah,
So I'm always amazed at that.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully these people are going to come to America. They're going to have an amazing time. They're going to go back and they're going to look around and go, wow, that place, you know, and maybe stick up for us a little bit.
Mhm.
I mean, I was talking to a friend who, I haven't spoken to him in 20 years, actually.
Mm-hmm.
20, no, I'm thinking about how old my daughter is. 22 years.
Mm-hmm.
And he lives over in Munich. And I'm planning a trip. And so I wanted to reconnect with him and his sister. And he was saying something about, it's people always make derogatory comments about Trump in Europe. And I was like, yeah, Trump. I love Trump. And he was like, he kind of like gave me this little like confused face emoji, and I was like, yeah, this is why I love Trump. Bump, 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 bump.
Yep.
And he was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know any of that. Oh, you're right. You don't know any of that because you're listening to your BS media and you're not actually like, you speak English. What are you doing? Like, follow some of these people, and if not, Google Translate, we'll put the subtitles right there. I mean, there's really no excuse for people not knowing the truth of what's going on.
Sure. Well, and a lot of this is people don't take the common sense approach to, well, he got elected. So and not only was he elected by electoral college, but by the popular vote on top of that.
Right.
So the majority of the population's in agreement with this.
Yeah.
So you can, when you're calling those names, you're calling those people those names too.
Yep. Yeah. I pointed that out too, because he was like, oh, he's just like this rogue, crazy dictator. And I was like, yeah, with the majority of the vote, like we're down. We're into it.
And what dictator allows people to call them names, by the way?
And take them to court and, do all the stuff, like.
I don't recall Stalin and Lenin having any of those issues.
Yeah. No sense of humor, those guys.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So it's just all of this stuff just falls on its face if you put up any kind of an argument to it. And plus, the next, I think Americans are waking up to this too. We have been we've been financing the rest of the world ever since World War II. And one of the things that doesn't get talked about enough is the fact that we're basically telling Europe, pay your own way. Yeah. We've been covering their nut for 80 years to keep them from killing themselves. Europeans got a European problem. You've got, I don't know how many different, and I wrote something about this as well, how many different cultures all like sharing the same landmass and a zillion different languages, and they don't get along. And it's funny to me is they throw that out as like something that makes them erudite because, everybody in Europe speaks all these different languages, implication being that makes them superior to Americans who only speak one language. Yes. The reason why we're killing you in terms of GDP and every other measure is because we only speak one language. Can you imagine running a football team and having 5 different languages on the team? It would not work. We need multiculturalism is a disaster. Monoculturalism is where it's at. Europe's got a problem because it's got multicultures. You don't need many cultures. You need one culture.
Yeah.
And that one culture better be Judeo-Christian.
Yeah.
And if it is, you're going to do really well. And if it isn't, you're going to be in Hurt City. And hey, you don't need a study for this. Just look at any GDP, per capita thing that you see out there, and you'll see Judeo-Christian countries at the top and all the other ones at the bottom. It's not politically correct to say it, but I think we're beyond tiptoeing and being nice. I think one of the reasons that Christian conservatives have gotten into trouble is because they just won't speak the unvarnished truth. That's just the truth. Now, why it's true, we can get into the rationale and discussions around why that's the case. It's a very interesting discussion, I think. But at the end of the day, the countries that do best are Judeo-Christian countries, because it's only Judeo-Christian countries that can handle representative forms of government. Because Jesus's comment, what was it? Given to Caesar's what is Caesar's, right? Right there, that makes you distinctly different from pretty much any other religion. This religion doesn't even want to rule that way. And it doesn't make you be it. You can choose not to be. Of course, there's consequences.
They're personal consequences.
But they're personal consequences.
Yeah.
Now, here's the other side of that, though. If too many of us don't do it, then the nation will not survive.
Right.
I mean,
I guess what I mean is you're not going to get your head chopped off.
No, we're not going to force you to.
Yeah.
Right.
If you don't convert to Christianity, you're not going to lose access to your family if you don't convert to Christianity, but you do suffer those consequences if you're not a Muslim.
And that's precisely why those countries perform at the bottom. because how can you have new ideas when you have a clerical group ruling it from the top? You don't get any new ideas that way,
Yeah.
because you can only get what they tell you. And one of the things that makes, and I've been listening to a number and reading a bunch of things on how America did so well in World War II, for example, because of the American ingenuity that came from the bottom. A lot of those inventions that you see that resulted in weapons that allowed us to like win that war with minimal expenditure of life was because of ideas that came from the privates and the sergeants and the sailors on how to fix and do things that were, and then to have a culture at the top that would listen to those guys and say, "Hey, that's a pretty good idea. We'll try that out and do it." Right? That didn't happen with the Japanese military or the German. Those are all very much top down. Do what I say. Right? Well, you know how long it takes for a great idea to get to the top. Every great idea starts at the bottom.
Yeah.
But you have to have a culture willing to implement that stuff. And we'll have to do a rant on this. We'll have to do one on this sometime too. But time after time after time, these phenomenal inventions. Here's one. It makes me think about because my father was in World War II. So, and the whole country's filled with these. This country was a nation of builders and tinkerers, right? Everybody worked with their dad and in the garage hanging under a car, fixing the bicycle. Everybody's fixing stuff. So when World War II comes along, and this is like a fascinating story, the Germans had this tank. I think it was a Tiger. It was by far the best tank. No question about it. This thing was like German engineering to the max. However, if something went wrong with it, it had to go all the way back to the back of the lines to get fixed. It took hours and hours to fix it. Whereas the Americans had this tank, the Sherman, and every boy who worked in the garage could fix it. So the thing broke down in the field, they just like fix it. An hour later, the thing was rolling again. So we wound up having how many more tanks were in? You can have the highest quality tank in the world, but it's not in the fight. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And that was true of pretty much every mechanized vehicle that came from this country. There were like things like the Jeep. Several of the generals said basically we won the war because of things like, there was like 4 or 5 things they mentioned. Like the Jeep was one of them. That you can go buy a Jeep right now. But the Germans were, they looked like this mechanized force, but they were really running on horses still in World War II. And where we're running supplies at 50 miles an hour down roads, they're still dealing with horses. And then you got to feed the horses, right? So the ability, or these ships, our aircraft carriers would get like just beat to death by the Japanese. Japanese would assume that carrier is going to be out for months. Then they turn out in the next fight. What the hell is that carrier doing back? Because the literally fixed the thing while it was at sea. That's American ingenuity, American I could do it myself-ism, stick-to-it-ism, creativism, all of that. We don't have to wait for somebody to tell us what to do. We'll just like handle it. And the same thing was true with the troops on the ground. One of the biggest things in that war was if something went sideways, let's say the Germans, they had to like go ask the top of the command to learn what to do. By the time the answer comes back, the whole field of battle has changed.
Right.
Or if let's say that the captain gets shot, the lieutenant gets shot, well, the NCO just takes over, runs the deal. Sergeant gets shot, the private like just runs it. And the Germans were amazed. They said they can't believe how responsive the Americans are. Because how are they doing this? We don't know what they're going to do. Well, the reason you don't know what we're going to do is because we don't know what we're going to do.
Yeah. We're like,
I don't know what decision the private's going to make on the ground. But we gave them the authority to do that. And that same thing is one of the reasons why American capitalism works so well, because you got 1 million different people out there working on a problem. You're likely to get a much better solution than if one person tries to come up with an answer to the problem, and then that one way doesn't work. Then you got to wait for the next person to go, oh, that one didn't work. Instead, we got like millions of people working on that problem, trying to figure out how to make money. And it's messy. No question. It's not orderly. Some places are going to go bankrupt. Some places are going to make it. But look at what you get in exchange. It's like insane how well we live. And we don't, and this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, we don't tell our kids or our young people that enough.
Yeah.
My generation was close enough to Great Depression, World War II, World War I, all of that. I mean, I knew people who were born in the 1890s. I mean, I knew them. And so they talked about real hardship. I'm talking about memories of the Spanish flu, the race riots of 1919, which a lot of people don't even know about, the Great Depression, that stuff. Not to mention the Vietnam and the Korean War and all of that. And these kids now have no corporate memory of that if we don't tell them that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things I'm really big on is we gotta like teach history, and teach it how it really happened. You
Yeah.
know, this nonsense, this group studies or that group studies. You can teach, uh, like for example, I've had exceptionally good Black history courses. Um, now that has a bad reputation because for the last 30 or 40 years, I've been teaching garbage. But those things can be taught really well. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
because it is all American history.
Yeah.
And it's great stuff. Everybody's contributed, and we just need to speak to that.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I mean, it's like women's history, women's studies, like, sure, study women, study men, study women, study Blacks, study Asians. So who cares? Study everybody, right? But don't politicize it.
That's
So, I mean, I was reading, I've been really surprised. I watched that Ken Burns special on the Dust Bowl,
mhm,
and then I ended up reading a couple books that were told. Well, actually, one book that was told through the voice and experience of a woman during the Dust Bowl era,
mhm,
and describing, moving with her family. Her husband, I think, was like, and this is all, like, what do they call it?
mhm,
Fiction, like realistic fiction, or where they take sort of like a combination of a bunch of stories, and then they create one person and one voice and one story.
mhm.
Anyway, and I just, I was surprised that the Dust Bowl was not taught in history, in high school history, right? Like, I had to watch the Ken Burns specials to really even understand
Mhm,
the devastation
mhm.
that
Yeah.
it left. I mean, it really, and it ordered our communities and our country, the population, because it moved the population, right?
Oh, it's huge. Yeah, and it's funny, they just touch on they skim stuff, and this is just how different education is now versus when I was in grade school. So we landed on Dust Bowl, and then we read a bunch of Steinbeck.
Yeah.
I mean, we stopped and we got into that. So now it's not just, oh, the Dust Bowl happened during this date to that date, and then move on to the next thing. It's like, no, here's what it was like to be in it. Here's some autobiographies of people who lived through it. Here's what it was like to actually the day-to-day life and what that looked like. That's what you have to do. And the best courses I've ever had all did things like that. Like
Hmm.
when I was in college, we had a class, History of Europe since 1789. It was like an advanced history class. I was the only non-historian in that. Everybody else were majoring in history.
Uh-huh.
I was crazy enough to take the 400 level class, even though I wasn't. But it was so good. And one of the things they talked about the Battle of Verdun. So you might hear the Battle of Verdun. Okay, 800,000 people got killed. Okay, great. Worst battle in world history, I think. But then we were into the diary of guys who were there. And here's what happened. Here's what happened when they did this bomb. Here's how people got blown apart. Here's what it looked like. Here's what I saw. I saw a torso in a tree. I saw a guy was running across the field. Next second, he's just vaporized. I mean, they get into what that was like. And yeah, you remember Verdun a lot better
Oh yeah. Yeah.
when, yeah, when
When
you
it's
live the
imprinted in that
experience.
way. Yeah. I love history, and I love it when it's taught that way.
Yeah.
Let's learn about some facts and some dates, but then, like you said, let's get into the experience of the people that were there, as
Yeah.
best that we can. And it's like actually visiting the
Mhm.
site of a famous battle. It's so much different than just flipping through the book or reading
Right.
it on the timeline. You're like, oh, that's
And then
whatever
what was
you're
and
on.
then what was the effect of that on historical events that happened after that? It's
Mhm.
kind of fascinating stuff. For example, because of Verdun, so you remember the movie it was the Tolkien one. It was Lord of the Rings.
Right? Mhm.
So remember the famous scene where Gandalf says, "You shall not pass," right? Well, that they
Mhm.
got that from a World War I speech That came from the general, I think it was Pétain, World War One, French general. It basically said at Verdun to the Germans, "You will not pass." That's where that comes from. And of course,
Hmm.
Tolkien himself fought in World War One. So you start tying all
Oh,
these things together, and all
wow.
that the bleak landscape with the orcs and all that, they came from his experience in the trenches in World War One. And people have this perception that the French always give up and lose, like what happened in World War II. Well, a lot of the reason for that was World War One was such a disaster for them that they just didn't want to like engage the Germans again.
Hmm.
And and so they didn't do a lot of the things to prepare for that next thing
Hmm.
because they just couldn't bring themselves. And you can imagine what that's like if you were to lose, I can't remember what the percentage was. They lost a huge percentage of their young male population, like generational stuff. Like you would go to like some of their schools, and it's still, I guess you can go and still see these, and it'll be like, let's say it's the class of 1917. Every single one is dead.
Mm.
You know, the entire class, like 400 like boys, gone, and like that whole generation is wiped out. And that was true of Great Britain as well, but especially France. So if you had that kind of experience, maybe that helps us understand why. I'm not saying it justifies it, but it helps you understand why they just weren't ready when the
Yeah.
Germans came back again.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, because the French were, of course, big supporters of our American Revolution, and they
Yeah.
were sending people over to, help us fight. And so they weren't always a bunch of, cowards.
No, yeah, because the reality is they were some of the most fearsome outside of that World War II thing. They were the most fearsome military on the continent for a long time. We got to remember like Charlemagne, right? And people like that. Or Napoleon, for crying out loud, right? Napoleon got to Moscow. Now Hitler's troops only got to the point where they could see the spires. Napoleon was in downtown Moscow. So those guys were bad to the bone, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like through our, see, remember our American lens is very short because we've only been around a couple hundred years, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Theirs is like a 1500-year, 2000-year lens. And,
Yeah.
and remember, they ejected the Muslims the first time around,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Crusades and all of that, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
uh,
Wow.
it's still fun to poke fun at them, though.
Yeah. They're not doing themselves any favors. That's for sure.
No, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But we have jumped around a little bit here. Let me see. I was
You
gonna see if
want
I could find. Yeah, I thought one thing we ought to at least touch on, the Keir Starmer thing is obviously like great news. But how about this thing with Fauci? Have you followed that a little bit?
just that he's not willing to testify anymore?
Yes. Boy, I tell you, that release of the emails from Tulsi, um, I think we're headed. I'm gonna just put this in the chat thing if I can get this thing to behave.
Yeah. Have you have
This is
you have you
a link
perused
to
any
the
of it? Have you perused any of the emails
yeah,
yet?
I
Or
did.
you did? I
Yeah,
haven't.
no,
I
I
haven't.
haven't actually, yeah, I've just seen articles. I haven't like done that deep a dive. But the fact that and this was a guy who wanted to talk to everybody. Remember,
Oh
you
yeah.
could not get enough of that. He was a rock star back in. How in the world can an epidemiologist be a rock star, right? But they elevated him to the status of God, and he, of course, could not avoid a microphone to save his life. And
Yep.
now all of a sudden he didn't want to testify. That tells you that the stuff is really getting ready to hit the fan. And our national press, as usual, is running away from this stuff. Yep, their lips are sealed. And in the meantime, we have one article after the next. And I think I might have sent you one on yet another. Was it a movie star or
Kyle Busch.
gosh, Kyle Busch? That Kyle Busch thing. Let's see if I can. I don't think I have it as a link I can send. I didn't real. I guess I missed the fact that he had actually died. I just saw that a couple of days ago. And what was it? Was it like was it a sudden embolism or something?
He
Uh,
had well, sepsis that was brought on by, was it pneumonia?
right,
Or
right.
yes, pneumonia. And I
Yeah.
mean, it happened within a couple days. So yeah, he was kind of sick in May,
Mhm.
and then maybe a week and a half
Mhm.
He was taken to the hospital, coughing up blood, and
Uh-huh.
then was like within 24 hours, the guy was dead. And they cremated his body. This is what I don't
Yeah,
understand.
cremated it fast too.
Well, that's what I mean. Like uh, how? I mean, I guess you're just so traumatized as member of
Mhm.
his family, as his wife and friends and family. I guess you're just thinking, I'm just going to believe what the doctors say. It seems like abominable, but I guess I'm just going to believe it because I'm seeing my husband, my father, coughing up blood. I know he's been kind of sick. I guess this is just something that
Mhm.
is real. I guess all of their diagnoses are real. And you're a non-clinical person, a non-doctor, you don't know. But oh my gosh. I mean, and yeah, I mean, what was he, 42 years old, 41, 42 years old?
41, 41. And it's like those guys are athletes, right? You're driving a race car, you are a stud. And to have that happen,
Yeah.
and I read this article with a famous cardiologist who speaks on this stuff. That's just like the probability of that is like nil. And I think you're right. They've gaslit these people. The general public has been so gaslit that unless you are like listeners or something like this, willing to challenge the party line, then you're just swallowing this stuff still. And I have a number of cases in my personal life of people who just aren't challenging it. And every time I turn around, it's like another person that dies or gets suddenly sick, man. And it's like, and I just posted another one. It was I don't know who David Sampson is. Apparently, he's a movie star of some sort, but his daughter suddenly got like brain cancer and died in like last like 5 or 6 weeks or something, right? Don't know for sure because, of course, nobody's asking the normal questions that 20 years ago we would have asked. Nobody's asking those questions. If somebody died young 20 years ago, they were all, were they doing this? Were they doing that? I remember Walter Payton got sick and died, the famous football star. They were all, it must have been drugs, must have been this. Now, it turned out in his case, it was a rare, like liver cancer, right? That got it, or liver, it was some kind of a liver disease that was really rare that got him. But
Hmm.
the point is, they asked those questions then. Now there's nothing, and we have far more people who are younger than
Yeah.
we did then, who are dying of all kinds of, well, let's just say things that young people don't die of.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the fact that I mean, he was certainly nationally known and well respected. Yeah, I mean, people are in shock. But
Yeah,
I, yeah, no, I mean, I'm glad Peter McCullough is the doc that you're talking about, and his
right, right.
he has a company that's called the Wellness Company, and
Mhm,
they have all sorts of really good combinations,
mhm,
supplementations, and they have a prescription prescription division as well for ivermectin and like
mhm,
parasite cleansing and
mhm.
um, he's got a protocol for getting rid of the spike protein,
Yeah.
and I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's I just, I think for a lot of people too, there's this side of it. If you took this injection, how difficult it must be for you mentally
Yeah.
to say, I bought into that. I'm responsible for this to
Yeah.
some degree. And
Yeah.
particularly if it's like a kid. If you had your kid do this because you believe what they told you, just think about how miserable you would feel. Even though it wasn't directly your fault, you believe these so-called authorities that for the last 60 years we've been able to reasonably trust. I sort of think that we should have not reasonably trusted them even then, but the evidence over the last 40 years is that they are completely untrustworthy. Um,
Well, every time I see, I mean, you just talk about, vaccines in general. Every time I see a child or a person, a young person who has autism, for instance,
mhm.
I look at them and I think somebody caused that.
Oh,
It's no longer like when I was growing up, you'd see, a Down syndrome child with their mom, and I mean, rarely, very
mhm,
rarely, but you'd see it and you go, oh wow, that's really too bad.
mhm,
Now I think to myself, you're a victim. You've been
mhm.
victimized.
Yeah, Yeah.
just like
Well,
millions of other people just like you. And there, for the grace of God, my children are safe. You know,
yeah.
my kids got the vaccinations. I mean, I thought I was being clever and sophisticated by like staging
Mhm.
them out, you know, like
Mhm.
pushing them out,
Right.
but they still got them.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, but it's just, it's too hard. It's too hard to accept
No.
that
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that you as a mom that you
Mhm.
as a mom could have allowed this. It's like
Yeah.
taking your child to a predator's house. You know,
Mhm.
it's like,
Yeah.
you know, okay, Johnny, go away on the camping trip with the pedophile. You know, like
Yeah.
I allowed this to happen. Why was I not paying attention? Why hadn't I read the insert? You know, all like you
But we
said,
believe them.
it's too hard to
Yeah.
it's too hard to
Mhm.
accept that that is
Mhm.
the truth.
We were raised to believe them. And that's a great segue into one other thing. I'll call it one of the problems that I think in modern society, I'll call it credentialism, right?
Mm,
And credentialism means basically anybody who's got a piece of paper they could throw on a wall, we're going to believe them just because of that. So if
yeah.
this person's a PhD from, John Hopkins or insert your whatever institution here, then they have we should believe them just because of that. And this guy over here who doesn't have that piece of paper, well, I'm not going to believe him. And it was funny if you watched what was the kid's name who they just assassinated? Uh, ah, you know, uh,
Austin Metcalf,
no, he was the
Charlie Kirk.
speaker, Charlie Kirk. So he would get into number debates, and people would actually challenge him on how can you speak on this because you don't have a degree. So the whole credentialing thing is really a problem in society, and people got to stop and realize, hey, you got a brain, turn it on and use it. Because those people, those so-called experts, a lot of them have their own agendas or they've been paid off. To put it in the street vernacular, ain't nobody caring about you like you.
Well,
And
and
you,
and
right.
anybody who's challenging that, why don't
Mhm.
you just take a look at yourself and what are your credentials? What have you gained from your credentials? Have they
Mhm.
actually equipped you to
Yeah.
think in the way that you need to think in this life?
Mhm.
Right? How many of us have college degrees and we're not doing anything to do with our college
Yeah.
degree?
Yeah, I'd be, I would say if you're looking at the college, and what we've been taught is look at the college degree like a trade school certificate, really. So if I get this, the way it's been taught, if I get this piece of paper, ergo, I will earn more money or I will able to do whatever necessary,
Yeah, it
which,
will facilitate my next move into this. It's a
right.
sure thing.
Right.
It's
And
not.
that is increasingly not the case. It was more so the case once upon a time, but boy, you got to look. But, and even if it wasn't the case 50 years ago, no big deal. It didn't cost you anything. Now, you got to really look at that. And I think that forget about the teaching you how to do the job component. At least when I went, there was still what I call in the traditional sense of what a liberal arts education meant. So I could go to a history class and learn the things that I just been talking about. For example, like we just been discussing, right? You can learn rhetoric and speech and communication and writing, all those things that aren't directly, it's not like getting an apprenticeship to this gig. But I think increasingly what this thing needs to get back to is this college for all nonsense has got to stop.
Mhm.
And you got to go back to the old trade school approach of, you go to if you're going to go to a school, it teaches this and you have this skill when you get out. And to make sure you have that skill, you get tested on that skill. I mean, I was a recruiter once upon a time and I recruited software engineers. And the interview was basically two components. The first one was we gave them an exam, right? On QRS, whatever it was, right? If they passed the exam, then I set them up to talk to the person in the interview. And if the interview went well, basically they were hired. That's it. You can do that job. You can write those kinds of programs. And this that sort of thing still exists for things like, let's say if you're going to be an air traffic controller, for example, like thank God. Right. But when there's a skill, let's say you're going to be a city bus driver, there should be a driving test for that. And you go to a class or school for that. And a lot of times, for most companies, they're going to teach you the job anyway. Like
Mhm.
when I was in medical sales, there's no pharmaceutical sales training program at the college. The company taught you how to do that, so why stop requiring people to go to college? Just interview them, and the ones that pass the interview, the company teaches you the job, just like it does everywhere else.
Yeah.
We,
Well, I agree with having a classical education that's
Mhm,
broad and that,
mhm,
teaches you how to think, how to assimilate information, how to whatever, and gives you some exposure to different tracks. Do you think you want to go, be a biologist? Do you think you want to go into clinical research? Okay, then go in this direction. But
and that should have been done in high school.
well, yeah, yeah, yeah,
That all used to be done in high school, right? So now high school is daycare service,
yeah,
basically. Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, did you hear about Carmelo Anthony and the appeal?
No, that must just happen today.
Nah, I was listening to a couple days ago.
Okay,
So, Carmelo Anthony was sentenced to 35 years in prison,
right.
and his parents then went on this big speaking tour where they
Mhm,
were claiming that, it was racist and that, the evidence wasn't allowed in, and, the witnesses, the
mhm,
right witnesses weren't allowed to, testify, and oh, and they didn't have competent representation,
mhm,
all these different things. And so they've vowed to appeal, and but they threw themselves on the mercy of the court and claimed that they were indigent and they couldn't actually afford their own defense. This was after raising $600,000 in GoFundMe.
I was gonna say there's some issues with that one, but anyway,
I mean, I don't doubt that they spent all the money. I
yeah,
mean,
right.
they had to hire all these, race hustlers and
Mhm,
do all these. They moved into a mansion
mhm,
while they were on waiting, for the trial to finish. I don't know why, but they did.
mhm,
And anyway, so they've got a lineup of 6 different attorneys who are doing this all pro bono. One of
mhm,
them is like a member of the ACLU.
mhm,
Another one is, kind of like an Al Sharpton, wannabe. So it's a bunch of these folks,
mhm.
and we're going to see how it goes. But I think these people are staking their professional reputations on this guy, and the outcome. And I think what they're going to find is that the judge was actually was interviewed recently, and he's no nonsense. He's
Mhm.
like, I absolutely knew that this was going to be a trial and a decision that people were going to be analyzing and looking to poke holes in. He said,
Mhm.
I did absolutely everything by the book.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and here's the thing, and there's so many tangents we can go with this. You're gonna laugh. The rant I was writing when I was late, it's about this.
Mhm.
It's about this very thing. But the race hustling business, and that's what it is. Booker T. I was a fan of Booker T. Washington, when I was a kid, and he has a quote about this very thing. He didn't call it race hustling because he wrote this thing back in 1911. So he didn't have a term for it. But he basically said there's always going to be people who are going to want to basically hustle, keeping this as a problem for as long as they possibly can, because it'll be their job and how they make a living. Dude said this in 1911. So here we are, and this is precisely what we have. The whole basis for the Democratic Party is to keep the race hustling thing alive. They've got to keep blacks trapped on the vote Democrat plantation, because if they lose that segment of the population, they are toast, because
Mhm.
they pretty much lost all the other groups, and they're starting to lose this group too. So the whole vote buying thing, you've got to keep racism alive by any objective standard. By the way, if you take a look at just a quick and dirty history lesson, NAACP was founded in 1905 in Niagara Falls, in a giant convention. And the objective of the NAACP was basically the United States to live up to the Constitution. No problem with that. If you take a look at just your objective evidence walking around, have those objectives been achieved? Are you kidding me? We've had a black president, sort of. We, there's no more water fountains. There's no more fire hoses on people. There's no more dogs being sicked on people. No
No,
more.
they're getting preferential treatment.
Right. No
The
more. Yeah,
minorities
in
get
fact,
preferential
yeah,
treatment on.
exactly. They're getting preferential. There's no more Democrat governors standing in doorways to keep kids from going to school. There's no more
Just for
Democrat
COVID. Yeah.
KKK poll taxes grandfather laws and lynchings. All that stuff driven by the Democratic Party, by the way.
Right.
all of that stuff's been eliminated. There's black heads of corporations, there's blacks, congressmen, senators, Supreme Court justice, the whole 9 yards. So basically, all the things those organizations are put in place to fix by the mid 90s at the latest were fixed. So now what do? Our whole raison d'etre, our purpose, our objective for being has been eliminated because we've solved the problem. So if we're going to stay in business, we got to keep this problem going, or we got to shift to something else. And that's precisely where we are. Because there's the reason they came into existence, that's been fixed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what they need to do, like you said, they need to keep the problems coming. But this is what government and bureaucracy and hustlers do. Well, we could say race, but I'm just going to say hustlers. This is what they do: is they muck about and cause a problem, and then they convince people that they are the solution to the problem.
Yeah, here's a better term for them. I call them grifters.
Okay, grifters. Yeah,
they're grifters, right? And you see it all the time. And so you have to keep this problem going, and then you have the one world government crowd, which the dream of the communists have been able to has been to create a race war from the beginning. That's been their dream, to cause the United States to collapse from within. And they thought that was going to be the thing that would be able to do it. And they just have not been able to be successful with it. It just hasn't happened. Mm-hmm. And I'd argue it's still not happening. The one thing it is doing, though, is it is destroying a segment of the Black population, number one. And the other thing I would argue with this is the way the media portrays it. The objective is to make the rest of America think all Black people are like that. And that's just not true. But
I think Black people, just like, rational minded Muslims, when there is a spotlight being shown on bad behavior for a people group, the best thing that people group can do is to quickly step in and become spokespeople to combat that and say, you're right, there's a problem and we're in favor of fixing that problem. It's crisis management, but it's real. You're gonna have to stand up and actually start aligning with your, with your white brothers and sisters, saying, we've got a problem.
But here's what's changed. You're absolutely right. But here's another one of those things that's changed in the last 40, 50 years. It has now become, you would be ostracized so badly if you were to step forward and be one of those people to say the things that you just said.
Yeah.
If I was to say that the biggest problems the Black community faces is illegitimacy and children out of wedlock and the crime and things that result from that, man, you couldn't have enough. There'd be so many pies flying my way and rotten tomatoes and eggs, right? So the vast majority of people aren't willing to take this stand, and I think this is true in a lot of groups and communities. So when you get the whole popular press is designed to keep this going, it'd be like going on The View and you're the only conservative. That's the kind of response you can expect to get. So what people decide to do is they just lay low. And so you don't hear from, it's kind of like that silent majority thing in the white community, if you will. If I lay low, then, I can just avoid all that. Why deal with the headache? Until it gets to be so big, and this is why you need to do what you just said, that it becomes unavoidable and inescapable. And that's kind of the place where we're approaching.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Anyways.
Yeah.
Well, girlfriend, we are coming up on time again.
I don't believe you. Oh my gosh. Okay.
That was too much fun. Again, I hope you all have enjoyed this as much as we have. Thank you, Lori, for your comments. And any closing thoughts, Leslie?
No, I was going to talk about New York and Mamdani and all the crazy democratic socialists, but we'll save that till next week. No closing thoughts, sir.
All right. We'll at the parking lot that it's largely all positive. We didn't get a chance to talk about the war and how that's going with it. Gas prices around here are dropping big time, by the way.
Yeah.
Which is the other thing. I'm not sure what's happening in California, but we're down about 40 or 50 cents around here,
Yeah.
which is incredible.
Yeah, we're
So
down to prices with a 5 in front. So I'm happy about that.
yeah, that's good. We're down to the 4s. So I understand most of the nation's down to the 3s.
Oh, sure.
So when you're out here, we're out here in commie land. It takes a while for us. Yeah, behind the red curtain.
Gosh.
All right. Well, you all have a good night. Leslie, it's been a pleasure as always. Y'all be good.